entire crypto market. I'll explain yet another reason why I have that level of conviction. Also going to share with you perspective from a number of XRP chart analysts talking about their expectations about XRP. And I'm just going to tell you here at the outset, this most recent drawdown has not changed anything. Any out of all the analysts that I follow that talk about XRP and chart it, none of them have changed their expectations about where XRP is going to land this market cycle because of this very short-term volatility that we've seen today and yesterday. Markets go down. This is the most volatile asset class on the entire planet. Of course it's going to do this from time to time. This is very normal. I have seen every up and down for almost 8 years now. I've been in crypto since November of 2017. I've never cashed out to United States dollars. I've never sold a single XRP. I've been holding. And I'm waiting till we get very close to the peak of the cycle, and there will be indicators when we get close to that. And then, yeah, I'm going to sell. Ideally, I'd love to sell all of my crypto. If I'm sufficiently enticed, I absolutely will. But this is not that moment. And in the very off chance that we're entering a bear market, you know what I'm going to do? Nothing. I'm going to hold until the market rebounds, even if that takes several years. But honestly, I do not think it's remotely probable that such is the case. And none of the chart analysts that I follow are concerned that this whole thing's over. In fact, all of the analysts that I follow, with I think zero exceptions, believe that we're going to have a crazy alt season coming up here, and there are tons of reasons to justify that position. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial bear, isn't it? That just occurred to me. How about that? I'm pretty sure you can Google, fact check me, but I'm pretty sure this is the last day of summer. Can you believe we're already heading into Q4 in just about a week from now? That's freaking buck wild. But good news, that's where you should expect some of the magic to happen. I think the market's almost certainly going to be picking up, especially in Q4. So again, XRP $2.83, 24-hour low of $2.76. Bitcoin, kind of a similar story here. It's currently at $112,625, which is just a little bit higher than its 24-hour low, closer to $112,000. We're not going to stay here though. And so take a look at this, and this is so fascinating. I've been talking a lot about the Russell 2000. That's of course small cap stocks. I've been talking a lot about Total 2. Which is a chart that shows the top 125 coins by market cap, excluding Bitcoin. So it's just showing what's happening with altcoins, broadly speaking, a good barometer. And look at how these things correlate. Look at this. What's on your screen right now, that lightish, I think it's a light blue color, that right there is the Russell 2000. And then the orange line, that's Total 2, altcoins. Do you see the correlation? And this is just going back to the end of 2021, but it's always correlated. Which is why I've said, look, we've never had an alt season without the Russell 2000 also getting bought heavily. That's why breadth matters. It really does. And so when people have an increased appetite for purchasing risk assets, which is certainly what equities and crypto are, like that's what they are. They're risk assets. As that appetite increases, people go further out the risk curve. They'll purchase, instead of just large caps, they'll purchase small caps. And instead of just purchasing Bitcoin, they'll purchase all the altcoins, Ethereum, XRP, going down the list. Because it's the same type of investor that's buying both asset classes. So if you have an appetite, if you're investing in both asset classes and you have a risk-on appetite, you're just going to allocate the money in such a way. Like that's why there's the correlation here. It clearly exists. And so that's why what happened this past Thursday when the Russell 2000 hit a new all-time high, that's why it's so substantial. And there's a little bit of rejection from this moment, but that doesn't mean that it's going to stay rejected forever. And so chart analyst Dom was talking about this. And this is, honestly, guys, this is of critical importance. That's why I'm taking time to talk about this, because if you want your XRP to be worth a freaking fortune compared to what it is right now, you want this to happen. And history tells us it's going to happen. It does tell us that we should expect, almost certainly, for the Russell 2000 to expand and for altcoins to go along with it. And so here's what Dom had to say. He said, Total 2 and RTY, which is the ticker symbol for Russell 2000, both hit fresh all-time highs last week. Days later, crypto gets a strong kickback. This is how I look at it. Do we think the Russell 2000 is going to print a triple top right here after putting in a fresh all-time high after 4 years? And I'll pause to note that he's accurate. Like it's been, as of November, I can't remember what date, but this November, it would be 4 years since the Russell 2000 hit an all-time high, other than an intraday high, which actually did happen in November this past year. But if you're talking about having a closing day that's an all-time high, it's been almost 4 years, and it just happened. This is a huge deal, folks. And so he says, do we think an initial kickback is expected? If Russell 2000 expands past this level, the riskiest stocks, why wouldn't crypto follow? When haven't they? At this point in this bull cycle, why wouldn't risk on in stocks translate over? That's how I view it and what I'll be watching these next couple weeks. Okay, so you get the cut of his jib. He's asking questions to make a point, obviously. Obviously, he very firmly believes that, of course, the Russell 2000 is going to go up, and of course, altcoins rather are going to follow that. The correlation isn't going to just suddenly cease to exist, and I've articulated why just a couple minutes ago. It's just how humans behave. If you have an increased appetite for risk on assets, what do? You buy risk assets. That is what you do. So it's great to see that the Russell 2000 sells, and fine, little rejection in the short term. It doesn't mean it's never going to go up. It's the same for XRP. Do you think that XRP just hit that all-time high in January and then consolidated another, over half a year to hit another all-time high, $3.65 in July, and then that's just it, without really entering that face-melting phase? I don't think so, folks. I think that's still in store here. We just haven't gotten to the point at the end of the cycle where you see that euphoric blow-off top. That doesn't mean it's not coming just because it hasn't happened yet. Of course it's still coming. That's almost certain. And so what are the odds of this? Well, I shared a post just a little bit earlier this afternoon. So this is at 12:51 p.m. Central. I posted this. And it just, mind you, if Russell 2000 goes and alts follow, XRP's in the mix. That means, because look, XRP's never gone on a face-melting rally without those being the conditions. So we need this to, we don't just want this to happen, we need it to happen. If you want XRP to go on an all-time high, forget the flip the switch bullshit. We need the market to behave, and I do believe that it will. But this is crucial if you're an XRP holder. And so here's what I wrote. History tells us to expect higher, much, much higher. After the Russell 2000 hits a new all-time high for the first time after a bear market, it's up 1 year later, 91% of the time. And folks, that's based on data going back to 1979. The Russell 2000 hit a new all-time high 4 days ago for the first time in nearly 4 years. History also tells us that when the Russell goes, alt season begins as well. XRP will be one of the greatest beneficiaries of this, and this is the moment we find ourselves in right this very second. Higher. And you can see this data that I got. I just pulled this from ChatGPT. I was asking about it, pulled data, and you can see right here. In instances where the Russell 2000 hits a new all-time high, where it's been over a year, where since it's hit a new all-time high, 10 out of 11 of those times, 91%, it has resulted in 1 year later the Russell 2000 being up. So, given that just happened, that means, if you want to take betting odds, what do you think? What do you think the good betting odds are? Obviously, 1 year from now, I'd pick that. And it's kind of fascinating too, because like most people, I'd been under the assumption, and maybe and this could still happen, that this cycle is going to peak like probably this year at some point. But there are people with that's minority opinion, but like Raoul Pal, Julian Biddle, Tech Dev, they are actually arguing that this market cycle might not peak until the second quarter of 2026. Now, I'm not in the betting game here, so I'm not going to bother predicting whether they're correct or incorrect. I'm just acknowledging it's a minority opinion, but it's based on sound data. They could be correct. And if that's the case, it is definitely not wild to think that a year from now, the Russell 2000 could be higher than it is right now. If that's the case, what do you think that means for altcoins like XRP? The next 12 months, and probably, and look, mind you, it could all happen, tomorrow. I don't freaking know. It could happen fourth quarter this year, the beginning of 2026. I don't know. It could happen sooner than later, but it's going to happen. That is a virtual certainty. I have high conviction on that. It'd just be wild if it didn't happen. Now, it depends on when Global M2 ultimately peaks for the cycle. It depends on when the business cycle peaks for this particular market cycle. But that's what I'm saying. Raoul Pal, Julian Biddle, Tech Dev, they're all arguing that the business cycle is not set to peak. It doesn't even look like it's even close. And Global M2, their projections are that it's not only is it basically at all-time highs, it's going to keep going even higher. So we'll see. But if that ends up being the case, You can, I mean, you can understand the argument, whether you think it's probable or not, and we'll find out. But man, if that's a minority opinion, if they end up being correct, I'm just going to say my hat's off to them. Credit where it's due if they end up being correct there. But you're still going to get the crazy bull run. We don't know when it's going to happen, and that's why when it comes to investing, especially in crypto, like the answer really is simple. It's just hodl. Hodl life, son. You just hold. I'm telling you guys, when it comes to investing, control the parts that you can control and let the rest go. Don't stress about it. You do not control if we're in a bull market or a bear market, and just make peace with that. You don't control when it goes, but either you have exposure or don't have exposure during those crucial moments, which is why for me, the answer, and I've made an absurd amount of money. My net worth is ridiculously high. And yeah, I haven't cashed out to USD, but my God, hodl life freaking works. I'm just telling you. I have nothing to sell you. Whatever you do, whether you do well or don't do well, it frankly doesn't make a difference to me. I mean, I want you to do well. I want everyone to do well. I'm just saying, you do whatever you want. But the truth of the matter is just holding. That's what's going to result in you winning here. And so then we have this. This is from on-chain analytics firm Santiment. Since Bitcoin's all-time high 6 weeks ago, bullish traders have been frustrated by the lack of sustained price bounces. We take a look at the encouraging whale accumulation, declining Bitcoin on exchanges, and buy the dip enthusiasm in our latest. And they provided a link, and for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to go into it. Even just sharing that blurb, I think is valuable. What happens when price goes down? The rich people take advantage of that. If there's fear in the market and we're not getting toppy, and we're certainly not right now in my estimation, that's when whales buy. When the whales don't buy, then take note, okay? Because eventually there will be a peak in the market, and you won't see a bunch of splishy, splashy whales getting aquatic as fuck buying stuff. Eventually. Now is not that moment, though, folks. Here's a post from chart analyst Mustache. This is the entire crypto market cap, excluding Bitcoin, also known as Total 2. And he says, just another retest of the all-time high from December 2024. And he posted this morning, by the way, as the market was crumbling a bit. And he says, nothing to worry about, in my opinion. Don't focus on the short time frame, but on the long one. The stronger the support, the better. And so indeed, the best is yet ahead. This is very normal. He's just saying, it's just a retest of the December 2024 high. This stuff happens all the time, folks. Here's a post from Credible Crypto. He shared something from CoinGlass, and they were highlighting, this is why you don't play with fire, man. Like, do not play with fire. Leverage is stupid. STOOPID, stupid. Look at this. They wrote, good morning, the biggest long liquidation so far this year. This entire year, folks. 24-hour longs liquidated. $1.62 billion with a B. Oh, I'm sorry. The thousands of percentage point gains that you can get by just holding XRP for a sufficient amount of time, that's not enough? You need to pepper it with some leverage, you freaking idiot stick? What the hell is wrong with you? FAFO, my friends. FAFO. That's what's happening right now. It's so ridiculous. It is so ridiculous. And Credible Crypto saw this and he wrote, love to see things like this because a flush of leverage is always healthy and allows future growth/expansion to be more sustainable. Spot on, Credible Crypto. Spot on. And by the way, he noted this as well. This is just this afternoon, 12:38 p.m. Central. He said, XRP making one of the stronger recoveries from this dip. Nice to see. And that's true. I was just kind of scrolling through Live Coin Watch here. And yeah, XRP is down over the last 24 hours, 4.65 cents. But there are a number of coins, like for instance, Doge, it's down over 9%. So it does vary. But there are a lot of coins that are down like 7, 8, 9, 10, over 10% for some of these things. So yeah, XRP is honestly not looking too bad, all things considered. It's going to ebb and flow with the market, but again, that's normal. It's not like just because you bought crypto, now there's no downside volatility. Like that's such a stupid idea to have. Like some people feel like that, like you buy and then you know that there's no way that you bought the literal bottom. You have to accept that, right? So then when it goes down, you're gonna have emotions about that. Do you recognize that doesn't make logical sense? You bought, and obviously you can't buy the bottom, but then it's lower, so you have feels that are negative now? Stop it. It's okay. Now, look, I'm teasing a little bit. I mean, there's truth to what I'm saying, of course, but it makes you normal if the price goes down and you feel it in the, if you feels get hit. It does make you normal, so you're not bad or stupid or weird or anything. But I would encourage you to be weird and then just not have emotions. Be like an XRP bot like me. Beep, boop, beep. No emotions. It's not necessary, man. It's just not necessary. Not when it comes to investing. Here's a post from Crypto Insight UK, XRP ETH chart here. It says XRP ETH held the higher low and potentially continuing here. So, okay, I'm waiting for this to go into blast off land. It's going to happen at some point. XRP's obviously been outperforming Ethereum since certainly since the election. And it's just going to continue to destroy Ethereum if you just let enough time pass. It picked up a little bit of steam because Ethereum was priced so poorly against the dollar. If you go back to like April, I predicted that. I'm not a wizard. It was just obvious. Of course, it wasn't the end of the road for Ethereum. Of course, when it was close to $1,400, it was going to rebound, and it hit a new all-time high since then. But by the way, that's another one that just barely peaked above the all-time high. So Russell 2000 barely peaked above it. XRP barely peaked above it. Ethereum barely peaked above it. And what, we think it's done? Hell no. No. We have not had the beginning of the end of the most fun part of the market cycle. That is coming here still, folks. Then there was also this. He shared a post noting that Ethereum liquidity was touched. That was sitting lower on the charts. And so he reposted that, and he said the same thing, same story for XRP. He said XRP had very little dense downside liquidity, but we got a perfect wick into that area, almost like this was a precision liquidity grab across the market. Note the huge amount of open interest flushed out here. Oh yeah, absolutely. People got liquidated. Do not play with fire. Do not use leverage. You fool. Come on, man. Figure it out. People get wrecked doing that. Unless you're some sort of advanced trader. And most people, you understand, 90 to 95% of traders lose money, right? Almost all of them. You want to jump into that and then add that stress to your life, and then there's this new time-consuming thing in your life that you must do. That's not for most people. I don't want to do it. Do you really want to do that? When you could just sit in spot and just hold? Come on, man. Here's a post from chart analyst Cantonese Cat, XRP USD on the screen here. And he posted this yesterday morning. He says XRP quarterly 3 months. So each candle here represents 3 months. He says XRP quarterly 3-month candles breaking above 786 and .886 log fib resistance levels make all-time highs a very strong possibility, and we are likely on the verge of doing so over the next couple of candles. So I know that we've dipped since then, but again, that short-term price action, it doesn't matter. That doesn't break higher time frame charts, my friends. He says higher. And this is what I keep seeing from every analyst I follow that charts XRP. Higher, my friends. It's not done. Here's a post just this afternoon, 12:02 p.m. from chart analyst Ali Martinez. And he says, if XRP holds above $2.71, buying pressure could build for a rebound to $3.60. So yet another analyst optimistic we're going to be getting back, potentially in the short term here, to that all-time high territory. And you know what happens after that. Face melt season is coming. Here's a post from chart analyst Javon Marks. It says XRP holding, and by the way, I'll note this is from this morning, so the price of XRP had already dipped with the rest of the market. He said, XRP holding above $2.47 means we are still targeting $4.80 and another plus 66% climb from here, perhaps at minimum. And so, folks, he's not saying that's where XRP peaks. He thinks this is going into double-digit territory. He's made that very clear, this market cycle. But in the short term, $4.80, perhaps higher. In the short term. I keep seeing this from tons of analysts, and it only seems impossible until one day it happens, and they're like, oh, yeah, okay. And then it's like, oh, of course, it feels like it was always going to happen then. So knock it off with the feels. Everything's fine, folks. Here's a post from Chart Nerd. This is also from this morning. He says, this XRP correction will make the next push-up phase towards $15 on the path to $27. The 382 and 0.5 fib support between $2.67/$2.42 will mark the bottom. Weekly 20 EMA support, $2.75, is holding strong this far. Okay, and so he's not promising that it has to go that low, and maybe the bottom's already in for this most recent move. I'm not in the game of making those price predictions. I have no interest in being a chart guy. It just bores me to tears, and you just don't need it. You don't need it to get rich in crypto. I have wild wealth compared to what I put in because I've just bought stuff, and then I did nothing, and it's been the better part of a decade. It's just worth way more. Duh. That's it. So I don't pretend to know what's going to happen in the short term here. I'm just telling you that this is the type of thing that I keep seeing from every chart analyst out there. Even the more conservative predictions believe that XRP, almost all of them believe that XRP is going to get at least close to double digits. And those are the conservative ones. We're not done here, folks. And all these analysts that I follow, all of them, I'm pretty sure anyway, did predict that XRP was going to absolutely just rampage this market cycle. Before it did in November, when it wasn't popular to say that, all the analysts I followed were like, what are you talking about? Of course it's going to go. And I argued that too, because markets find bottoms. Of course XRP found a bottom. It wasn't going to go to zero because it's useful. It has utility. The fundamentals, just because it has fundamentals, that's preventing it from going to zero. It's freaking useful. Because there are people like me who get that and will refuse to sell it no matter what happens. I mean, unless it becomes, an outsized portion of my net worth, in which case, yeah, then I'm enticed to sell. That's the dream. That's the point. Like, that's why I bought it. I want that to happen. Here's a post from Dark Defender. He says, XRP, after rejecting the $3.13, once again tapped our support level. It also touched the primary support trend in the orange color we have been using so far. Well, the structure remains as it is. Daily RSI is getting closer to oversold, and you can see that down here. It's kind of a good sign. Maybe we are getting closer to the bottom, or maybe we already saw it. And he says, I know there's a huge disbelief at the moment, and especially if this lasts in October, but we will all be surprised. Just remember, the falling wedge will ultimately be broken. Targets at $4.17, $4.92, and $5.85, and then to the downside, $2.80 and $2.64. So right now we're sitting pretty, folks. Here's a post from chart analyst E-Greg Crypto from earlier this morning. He says, it looks like the 50 EMA is on track to meet XRP around $2.77. If we break through this target, we could see further downside, which isn't what we want to hear. Okay, and so at least at this moment, the lowest we saw is pretty close to that, actually. $2, I think it was $2.76, isn't that right? Yeah, $2.76. So we got pretty close to what he's talking about here. Thankfully, hasn't dropped lower than that. He says, we could see further downside, which isn't what we want to hear. I know you might be tired of hearing me stating that $2.65, but this level remains the most critical zone for our upcoming bull run. While the lower time frames are worth monitoring closely, the higher time frame trends are still crystal clear. And look, that's a key point, and that's what I keep highlighting. Big picture, nothing's changed. People get hit in the feels over these short-term price actions, price action, all these movements. You don't need to. Use logic.